I call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, April 28th, 2025, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Welcome members of the community here tonight to observe the important work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. Dr. Hillman, we have some items in the table file. Will you update us?
Yes, we have several items in the table file, mostly under personnel items. We have appointments, we have increase, decrease, and change in assignment, and we have a couple of resignations. We also did add one additional supporting document to the priority-based budget reduction recommendations section. That supporting document reflects Benjamin Bus's best estimates of activities shuttle ridership.
Okay, thank you. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
Motion.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Second. All right, Amy, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Kelly, do we have anybody signed up for public comment? All right, that's item 3. Item 4, announcements and recognitions. We do not have any tonight.
Do not have any this evening.
So let's see. We are at item 5, items for discussion and reports, and we have none there as well. Item 6 is our committee reports, and I believe we have 2 that were submitted. Let's see. Yeah, the ad hoc committee report and the Northfield Forward report. Jeff or Jenny, do you want the report to stand as is, or do you want to offer any comments? Jenny, okay.
I just wanted to make a couple of my own comments regarding the meeting. We had set some parameters because it was our first meeting that the 3 of us had attended, which included deadlines. We went over kind of a timeline of what our goal was for accomplishing a few different areas. The first one was kind of studying some of the other school districts, what they're doing, and also taking some comparisons with the MSBA's recommended guidelines. So that probably took the most amount of time, I think, because they're very thorough. So we went through that and other recommendations, and then we, each of the 3 of us kind of talked about where we would like to see the evaluation lean toward, or any improvements, because I think hasn't been improved since 2012, I think. So we each seem to have a lot of areas that we would like to see improved or revised, at least somewhat.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll make a couple of comments. I would say that just kind of looking at from the last 15 years of doing kind of a refresh, and after watching the School Board Association's webinar that we watched, there's some different formats that one can use. And then kind of through our meetings, we kind of been chatting a little bit and are kind of working towards landing on a newer process that's should be liked. So I think we'll figure that out the next go around. So thanks for your leadership on that, and Jenny.
Thank you. Right. Corey, would you like your report to stand as is, or do you want to give some comments?
I'll let it stand as is. Thanks.
Good. We're on to the consent agenda. As a reminder, there were some personnel items in the table file added to that consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Corey, second by Jenny. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item 8 is our items for individual action, and that is our priority based budget reduction recommendations. We will have Dr. Hillman and Director of Finance Val Murtasoff give a short presentation or open it up for any additional details. I also have some comments that I want to make, and so I will do that now and then start to discuss the packages in the order of areas. So we'll start with the activities package first, but I wanted to just again thank the 80+ community members who worked with our administrators to identify $6 million in proposed reductions. Of course, thank Val for her excellent management of our district and Dr. Hellman for his leadership. Also all the administrators who helped identify and define what the reduction in a given area would entail. We also thank all the district stakeholders who emailed us, connected with us, attended the forum, and generally followed the whole process, even being here tonight. So we thank you for staying engaged and for helping us sort through those reductions. A reduction of this size cannot be accomplished without impacting staff and programs. 80% of our budget is salaries, rightly so, because as much technology as we use, we still need the human-to-human connection. And the need to reduce across the district comes due to years of chronic underfunding of public education by the state, as well as other external factors such as declining enrollment, which is happening nationwide. Our funding needs are not a moving target, but in fact, a direct reflection of what it takes to meet the needs to educate students pre-K through 12 in 2025. So I ask you to please advocate to your St. Paul and DC representatives to adequately fund public education in our state and nationwide. Public schools are funded primarily on a per pupil funding formula, and Northfield is also funded by our generous community. Students are in need of mental health resources during the school day. They need academic interventions. They need academic and athletic coaches. They need to learn how to use technology responsibly, how to create with their hands, their voices, their bodies, their minds. They need help and support of our licensed nurses. They need to be safe in their classrooms and buildings. They need bus transportation, and they need staff who can connect with them. School in 2025 is not just reading, writing, and arithmetic. And it's this reality that makes a $6 million budget reduction a heavy lift for our district staff and our students. Everyone will be doing more with less. And some will take a pay cut, some will go part-time, some will lose their jobs, and none of their duties are being reduced. And so it's a real loss for all of us. Families will also share another part of that burden as they hear about bigger classes, and students will have less staff to relate to, share their space with more classmates, and possibly have less time in their schedule for electives. We heard from parents who are graduates of the middle school and the high school, also remembering the education that they received and wishing that there was more for their students. Just to say that as a community, we can't build a robust, individual-centered education without the financial support of the state. The state, for example, requires only one licensed nurse per district. And we understand that is not the best for our students. They require elementary students to walk within a mile of their building. They require student testing and teacher training without funding much of those expenses. They require services to our most vulnerable population without funding adequately and entirely funding that. Public school is a state institution and should be adequately funded to support a modern student population. We're very lucky that our community steps up every time we ask. I'm saddened by the need to make these reductions. We all are as a board. It's both terrible and necessary. If we don't maintain a healthy budget, we can't provide for staff and students into the future. So we will now begin the voting process on our reduction packages. Please wait to be called on as we discuss. Aim to limit yourself to allow for other board members to speak. I will come back and call on you as much as you need, but please do wait to be recognized. And so now we will have, I will also ask if there's anything we would like to pull from each of the packages before we move forward. And so it'll be similar to our consent agenda process. Dr. Hellman?
So we'll have Tim's going to bring up the reduction packages on the screen so board members can see those. I really appreciate how board members have leaned into this process. You've been excellent listeners. You have heard people, you've actually genuinely heard people and their concerns. I wish more people could have seen the work session that we had last week. I think it was a model of what civil democratic discourse looks like. People have had a lot of opportunity to be engaged in this. Those that large budget reduction teams, the 5 teams met 3 times in February. We had 177 people at the community meeting for public input in early April. We've had multiple board meetings where this has been discussed. So this board can really say we have done with this with the community as opposed to the community. And so now it's time to bring this to resolution and to move forward together. There's nothing easy about this. I want to just echo everything that Claudia said. We are all experiencing grief, and it's okay to be disappointed and sad and even angry about some of these things. I think we all should be. And then we look to the future with optimism. And we know that we still have a staff who are going to do good things for kids every day. And we're just going to have to move forward together over an appropriate amount of time of reflecting upon this. So we can start with the activities package.
Yes, we'll start with the activities package and we'll allow for some short presentation, and then I will ask board members if they want anything pulled before we vote.
So you've seen the activities package several times. You've discussed it at 3 different board meetings, 2 board meetings and a work session. On this particular slide, there was a number of questions I do want to point out that we did include some ridership data for the activity shuttle service that was requested at the work session. You had that in your packet. And so we'd be happy to answer any questions that people have at this time about any further final questions people have about the activities package.
Questions at this time?
The passing along of the credit card fees, I don't believe it's actually, nope, it is line number 7, Jeff. It's in several different packages, but passing along the credit card fees to the users, that's line number 7.
Yes, I'd pull 7. I have some questions on that.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jeff, do you have questions on it?
Yeah, should I ask now?
Yes.
I'm just wondering for, and it says, if somebody's going to a game and they put something on their debit card or whatever, or a PayPal or a Venmo or something, that there'd be no fee for that. So some of the straight transactions, there should be no fee on. It's only if they're using credit card, correct?
I'm gonna ask Val if she can help us with that.
So the systems that we have, the primary driver of this dollar amount is our actual online activity registration software. And so those would have a prompt. There's typically also an option to use an ACH, like a checking account, that's a lesser fee, or depends on each company. But that would be the typical, I would say if they're using a debit card, it's typically still associated with Visa or MasterCard. But it would say, we would always have a cash or check option if they didn't want to do that. But most of them, the ones that we have access to are Square. And then the Affinity is the registration software.
So are there options that they could use something that doesn't have a fee?
Yep,
Okay.
we would still allow cash or check.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions on this package? No. Not seeing any more questions. Okay. Is there anything that anyone would like to pull from the activities package? Any item that I want to pull? I'm not seeing anyone wanting to pull anything from the activities package, so we will move on to the vote. Can I have a motion on the activities package? Okay, Amy? Second? Second by Maggie, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the reduction package activities, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, none, so motion carries on that. Our next package is the district services package. And we'll allow for a presentation and any questions on that package.
So this package, again, you've seen several times in the past. There there were not a tremendous amount of questions on this particular package related to needing new information. You know, there were obviously comments and questions about the impact of some of the pieces. The one item that there was a question on that I will highlight, line number 37, there had been a question about being able to use some other kind of software other than Zoom to be able to broadcast board meetings. And we have determined that there are other options other than Zoom. We had selected to keep Zoom at this point because very stable, has a number of different features that have been helpful, but it is something that we are confident we can find an alternate service that is lower cost or no cost at all to be able to stream the board meeting. So if a board member wanted to add that $9,600 savings to line 37, you could. Otherwise, what you'd also be able to do is just let it, let it go as is and be assured that the administration is always looking to reduce contracts and things like that. And based on that comment that was at the work session, we would look into doing something different other than the Zoom webinar.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions? Amy?
I just have a question on the reduction of the custodian and how that would work, because how do you reduce a custodian?
So what is, to my understanding, what is happening there is that we've redistributed that FTE to a different facility. And then we do have a person here who works full-time to support the building during the day. And then there would be another district-wide custodian who would have part of their duties changed in the morning to come through to do any cleanup from evening activities the night before, garbage removal, things like that. So in this building, it's focused on the district office and area learning center building.
Any other questions? Corey?
Just general comments and kind of broadly for this package and a few others. First, I just want to echo what you said, Claudia, about all the engagement pieces and the sacrifices and the unfortunate circumstances we're in. So I just want to make sure that's heard. I had shared throughout the process, including last week's work session, I agree, Dr. Hillman, it would have been nice if there was a way for more people to experience what we did in 3 hours to discuss this. And I shared this sentiment last week. While I support what's in front of us, I do have concerns about a couple of the administrative position changes that goes to the buildings as well. I think what I said last week was people don't know what the engine is behind this. We still need people to do the work to help keep the structure and boundaries in place, but I take solace in knowing these are recommendations from smart, dedicated public servants who have weighed the pros and cons of all these and are willing to try to do more with less. I approach that with some hesitancy, but I will support it. And again, this goes for other packages as well as in terms of administrative positions. I'm curious if we approve what's in front of us tonight, I won't pick anything specifically, but with an administrative position, whether it's in a building or district office, what process can we have in place in the next school year to get updates to see if it's meeting the standards that we need before we could potentially consider maybe stepping back from that and reconsidering some of those positions? Is that something you've worked through in the past? How involved is the board in that? And how do we, if things don't go as well as we hope, how do we get in line for next year to maybe step back on a few?
So I think, Corey, there's a few ways that we'd be able to report some of those items to you. One, as you know, we regularly survey staff, either in our annual employee survey. We also have an annual parent survey, which despite the reduction of the student education contract will continue. We also do a lot of what I would call pulse surveys. So after small team meetings or work groups where we are getting feedback that way. And also we'll be able to do some time study work too, where we take some snapshots of the positions where these duties are being redistributed to try to determine, the capacity, if you will, of being able to complete those tasks to the best of our ability. There will be things that will not get done that will intentionally say we're not going to do. Things that have been nice to do in the past, but no longer have capacity. We're doing an exercise right now of every district department going through areas of assignment. So it's a little bit bigger than a task, if you will, but it's an area of responsibility and how those are going to be redistributed. So that's something that we can show you a before and after. And then we certainly can provide the board with updates through the year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Amy?
I just want to say thank you to all the district services staff They work so well and sort of invisibly because they do everything well. And so they're not causing any problems and we don't always notice them. And I think we're asking a lot of the district services staff with these budget cuts. And I just want to acknowledge that they have gone above and beyond the initial request and that they're taking a lot on themselves, and let them know that I personally, and I'm sure the whole board, appreciates their willingness to give so much to our school district. So thank you all.
Anyone else question or comment on the district services package? Okay, not seeing any more questions, and so we'll move on to a vote. And I have a motion on the district services package.
I move to accept the district services package as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there anything anyone wants to remove from the district services package? Talk about that, I get that piece. Is there anything anyone wants to remove? Any item you would like removed? Okay, then we'll have Corey's motion stand and Amy seconded that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. District services package reduction passes. Next, we have the elementary package. Dr. Hillman, do you have any comments on that?
We did not have anything specific coming from board members at the last meeting about this particular package. And so you've seen a number of supporting documents, including projected class sizes, comparisons with other districts. And so I don't have anything to add from the time that we last met.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments at this point on the elementary package? Not seeing any questions. Is there anything anyone wants to remove from the elementary package for separate consideration? Jenny?
I would like to remove line item 42 for separate consideration.
Okay. Is there anything anyone else wants to remove for separate consideration?
Can I make a suggestion? I would just like to suggest, board members, if we remove line item 42, I'd also recommend that you remove line item 43. And the reason I say that is that the specialist reduction is in concert with the number of sections. So if board members review something significant, it might be fine depending on where those sections would come from. I don't want you to approve I don't want you to approve the specialist section reduction and then do something different with the classroom section reduction.
So we'll pull item 42 and 43 for separate consideration. Any other items board members would like to remove from the elementary package? Any other items at this point? All right, then I move that we approve the elementary package, reduction package without item 42 and 43. Can I get a second? By Jenny. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. So our elementary reduction package passes without item 42 and 43. We can now have a discussion on those items. Jenny, do you want to start first?
Sure. Thank you, Claudia. So regarding line item 42, reducing 9 general education classroom teachers, I wanted to make a few points as to why I struggled with supporting this reduction. First, I guess, is that elementary students are just too little to really advocate for smaller class sizes. You know, we can't expect that they would understand that that could be an issue, or that could pose problems with larger class sizes. So I think that's important to keep kind of in the background when considering this. And then also within our own district, we've had teachers that have given us information on the professional development that they receive here within our district that teaches and using research-based information about the connection and direct attention it takes for students to learn. I mean, this is coming from not from electronics, not from other students, but from teachers. Kids in class sizes, larger class sizes are often split up into groups. And, and that is meant to help each other. But I have to mention that a retired kindergarten teacher once told me that, sure, a lot of learning happens in kindergarten, but he mentioned how much time he actually spends just teaching students to how to be students at that age. It's a large amount of time of each and every day for the whole year. And that cannot come from other students. Students of the same age cannot teach, the other children behaviors, proper behaviors and things like that. They can make examples, but it's really difficult for them, and nor should we ever expect them to teach behaviors. Also, having fewer children in class reduces the distractions in the room and gives the teacher more time to devote to each child. Some say that it's really the teacher's experience level and having a solid curriculum that we should be concerned about, not so much class size. But in my years of working at and volunteering in different elementary schools, I have seen that you can have the most exceptional teacher and the most world-class curriculum, but if you have large class sizes with distractions, it takes the focus off that exceptional teacher, and it takes the focus away from that world-class curriculum. So at that point, those two factors don't matter. Another point that I witnessed a broad spectrum of academic performance levels when I worked and volunteered in these schools. For example, one classroom, it was a first grade classroom that I worked in, and I had one student that came to me and said, I need help writing the word mom. But then in that same classroom, same day, I had another student that had written so many stories, and they were pages long of stories that he wrote himself. And he had so many that he needed help binding them together to form a book so that he could be an author. These were both boys were the same age, same grade, same classroom. And so we expect these teachers to just deal with these hugely, very large, disproportionate academic performance levels, and to do that with a much larger class size, you're just adding more levels there, and that they have to try to work around. Another area was we can look at studies that point out that smaller class sizes are better, but one in particular I think that I studied a lot was Project STAR, because of the long-term duration that seemed to give me the most amount of confidence. And in that particular study, after 4 years, it was clear that smaller class sizes did produce substantial academic improvement. And their class sizes ranged from 13 to 26. And reducing class sizes to about 16 led to higher student achievement compared to class sizes of about 24 students. But most moving to me, and this was the words of the study, not my own words, but was the effect of small class size on the achievement of minority children was almost double than the non-minority children, which then leads me to think about closing the achievement gap once and for all. We keep bringing that up year after year. It's an issue. And I feel that with smaller class sizes, that would really give us the chance to actually do that. And so that was probably one of the biggest areas that I really struggled with supporting this, is that if we could close the achievement gap with smaller class sizes, that's something that I think we should really be thinking about. And then also, something I realized was student outcomes will not change unless adult behaviors change. And so when I think adults in a school district, I think about school board members, superintendents, and of course, our state legislators. I don't like looking at the issues of other school districts and using kind of that as an excuse, such as we saw some averages of class sizes from other school districts that were maybe larger than ours were. And I feel like that's really just kind of using that as an excuse to then increase our class size. But what happens then is when we start comparing to other school districts, a couple years go by and we end up having the same problem that they're having. And then we all say, well, but we're in the same boat as the other school districts. We have the same problem. Only if we go back a couple years, we possibly could have prevented that problem, for us anyway. Also, another area is that state law governs elementary class sizes in statute 126C12 to maintain low ratios and use their LDR class size revenue, that we should use the revenue that they give us for this. And I believe it was around $800,000 this past year. This is not a standard or a benchmark. This is a law. It's state statute. So should be no interpretation because it's state law. And it was in place since 1993. And I was curious to see what class sizes they were recommending back then. So I went back to the statute from 1993, and it was the same. It was 17 students from kindergarten through grade 3 is they're recommended. And today it's still at 17. Although there was other areas of that statute that changed from then to now. So to me, when they changed other areas of it but kept that number 17, that tells me how critical they're trying to tell us that that small class size really is, when they have kept it for that many years. And they also, of course, give us revenue to try to keep class sizes low. It was said during our workshop that the elementary level package did not have much to reduce other than FTE, which is very understandable. But it got me thinking, if our elementary buildings are already operating the most lean, which that package was 99% of that budget package, a reduction was licensed teachers. 99%. These other budget packages didn't even come close to that 99% for reducing teachers. That was alarming to me, and thinking that maybe our administration team could have possibly given different parameters, knowing that our elementary schools are operating more lean, if you will, or a different calculation, or just taking that into consideration, and then had the board decide maybe what those parameters might be in thinking about the elementary budget reduction package. So I do see a missed target there. I also know that this is a reduction for the coming school year, so we can always say, but we can hire those teachers back. But it was also said that we may be reducing every 2 years, maybe even we'd be taking a look every year, every 3 years. But whatever it is, I can't see that we'd be recovering those 9 teaching positions after this reduction period. And then even if we phase out compañeros, that would still leave us with the same amount of teachers, the same class sizes, the same students. And so while that might give us more balanced class sizes overall, we're still going to see those high potential class sizes, upwards of 28 in first, second, and third grades, which is still alarming to me. So those are a lot of the reasons that I won't be able to support this item.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing that. Any board members have discussion, comments on items 42 and 43? I just want to say, Jenny, that I don't want to see the elementary lose all of these elementary teachers either. I taught second grade for a short time, and I know year in and year out what a bigger class size felt like, and when we would lose students throughout the year, and suddenly it felt like a light class at 21. So I connect on those points, and I also heard administration support this particular reduction. And so for me, it's about, I want to say, we don't want to reduce any staff. So the $6 million has to be staff and programming. And I'm with you. I don't want to see it reduced. And I agree with you that class sizes are important and make a difference. I'd like to hear about the law that you mentioned. I don't know if Val or Dr. Hammond, do you know about the law that Jenny brought up?
I don't know specifically about the class size, so maybe Dr. Hillman can talk about that, but I believe it references our learning and development revenue. That's part of our general education formula. And we do get about $800,000 per year that's distributed between the 3 elementaries in terms of costing to support salaries.
And what are the parameters for that distribution or requirements?
There's not, I mean, there are requirements to spend it. We've always just spent it at our elementary buildings. And we've just
But it's not connected to class size then?
not, it's part of our general ed aid formula that we get.
Yeah, and my understanding of this law over the years is that's intended to be able to support maintaining a small class size as a district can do with the goal of being at 17. Jenny's right, they've used that 17 number all the way back because that is what the research is on class size. In fact, if we do a broad look at the research on class size, it's actually quite mixed, right? The key part, what Jenny shared, is that it's got to be at the size actually around 15 really to see that return. And so I'm certain that that's why the number 17 was put in the statute all those years ago. And as Jenny knows, because we both looked at the statewide class size report, the way that it is reported at the state indicates to me that they actually count more than just classroom teachers as part of that calculation toward 17. So it certainly is what we would prefer. And even with, just to go through what we're projecting for next year with the reduction. So right now, at kindergarten, we're at all 3 buildings, we are projecting, based on today's data, we're projecting less than 20 students per class at kindergarten. That's with adding that 4th section using contingency at Bridgewater. There is the one contemporary size outlier right now that we're projecting for next year at Bridgewater, where we are seeing right now 27 as the average there. There's some work still being done about are there ways to shuffle some of the FTE to bring that down.
27 in what grade?
Grade 1 at Bridgewater, at Spring Creek, and at Greenville Park. Greenville Park, you're looking at an average of 23 versus 21 at Spring Creek. This is again based on today's numbers. 2nd grade, and this is just contemporary. We are looking at in 2nd grade, Bridgewater at an average of 20 next year, and Greenville Park and Spring Creek both at 23, much higher than 17. Obviously, I'm just making sure that people have the data. And then in grade 3, you are looking at an average contemporary size at Bridgewater of 23 and at Spring Creek and Greenville Park of 25 each. So that is what we have. We do put the funding toward those lower class sizes. It's obvious, we spend obviously much more than $800,000 on kindergarten through 3rd grade staffing. So Jenny, you're not going to get an argument out of me at all on this. This is one of those things we would prefer not to be doing it. And I would argue there's less, when you get to the middle school and high school, there's a more variety of different positions that are there. I think that's why the packages also look that way, the way the makeup of the elementary school. And so I don't disagree with you that the elementary package will always end up being more general ed classroom staff than maybe other packages just because of the way that schools are structured. So again, something we prefer not to do. I appreciate your comments, and we will certainly keep that in mind as we move ahead.
Yeah, Jenny?
Thanks. So the statute under subdivision 4, revenue use, revenue must be used to reduce and maintain the district's average class size in kindergarten through grade 3 to a level of 17:1. So it is tied to it.
All right, Ben, do you have a question or comment?
Just a comment, I guess. Yeah. I mean, if that goes back to 93, I think about my mom, who was a 1st grade teacher in Burroughs and Minneapolis district, and I can guarantee you that they never had a class size of 17 in 1st grade in the Minneapolis school district, probably 30 at some time. So, I think I would love it if the legislature would allocate enough money to make that a reality. That would be great, but they haven't. And that's just sort of the reality that we live in. And I think that's kind of what we're contending with right now. I think I just have to go back to, I mean, I agree with Jenny in the sense that nobody wants to cut, especially teachers at the elementary level, but I think this is spurred some good discussion, and we've heard that, from the parents and looking at just what other programming, especially as we go into next year and think about how do we reimagine kind of how we do some of the learning and budgeting for that in that space. I guess from my perspective, the board is here to pass a budget tonight that fits that fund balance policy that we have, something, that we're above 14% when we approve a final budget. And you'll hear me, support pulling something in the secondary package just in a little bit, but pulling that's still going to get us there. And obviously pulling a line item like this would put us well below that number. We've had this package for 2 months, and this is the first that I've heard of any reluctance from another board member in terms of supporting that. So I can't support it just because we've got that budgetary requirement to meet. But, I guess I always encourage other board members to lean into the process. If that's something that's important to you, have those conversations early on during work sessions, things like that. I think coming at the night where we vote on it just makes it problematic for me. So to think about how those pieces fit together. So that's.
Sure, no, I
my comment.
appreciate that, Ben, and just to add that, we are giving space tonight for people to have questions and to seek for clarification. And we are asking board members if you need to pull an item, to pull it. So, it's really challenging. And so I appreciate all of you for working through it. Go ahead, Maggie.
Yeah, I agree, Jenny, that the class size is important, especially with the younger kids. I liked your point that they're so young, they don't know to advocate for themselves. I think that's very true. And then the students who are even coming into the district or families coming to the district, they don't, necessarily know that this is something to think about. So I think I support this reduction, but with great sadness. I think it's not something that is a good thing to do for the teachers and the students in our elementary schools. I think especially also the specialist reductions that have to go along with that, and potential, to have some specialists be traveling. That's not a great thing for our elementary buildings. But I sort of weigh this recommendation, and I think of it as a recommendation from the elementary group that came up with this recommendation, that rather than, cut an entire specialist area from the elementary school, or rather than go down to 4 days a week. I don't think elementary parents would love that. Go down rather than consolidate schools. Do we, I think there are other ways to get to a budget number. And to me, this is kind of like the lesser of those evils. And I feel like this is the moment to do this and hope that we don't have to continue to raise the class sizes.
Thank you, Maggie. Anyone else at this time? Okay, Amy?
So, Jenny, I appreciate your championing the elementary school teachers. I think that they are very important to our district. Again, though, we don't have any options here at this point, so we're not deciding between things. We're just looking to reach a certain goal. And none of us, I think, would want to get rid of classroom teachers, but we're stuck in this unfortunate situation. So while I wish I could vote to keep them, I think at this point I still feel like I need to, unfortunately, reduce the number of classroom teachers.
Thank you, Amy. Anyone else? Question or comment? Okay, so what'll happen now is we'll have a motion to approve line item. Can we do both together?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll approve line item 42 and 43 will be the motion, and then you can vote it up or down. Okay, so I move that we approve the reduction of line items 42 and 43 as presented. Can I get a second? Okay, second by Ben. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The reduction passes. Okay, we are now on to the secondary package, and so it's the Same format. We'll have a small presentation, if any. Board members can ask questions, and then we'll see if there's anything people want to pull. We'll vote and then discuss any items that were pulled.
Yeah, so the change between the work session and today is that you'll see we, as we said at the work session, we added a line item 49.1 that essentially retains the 7-period day. You saw that that was presented in the sample schedule option 1 that was shared at the previous board meeting, or excuse me, at the previous board work session. Line item 49 remains as is from the previous one. The other items that were changed, if you go down to, based on board member feedback, line item 67, 67A, and 67B. These are all about high school parking fees. And so the original recommendation was increasing from 100 to 150 per pass. We heard at the work session, board members wanted a few more options. So we have offered a line item 67A and 67B. I do want to point out that 67B would actually generate $60,000, not $50,000. So those are the other options should board members be interested in looking at those. If you choose to remove either of those, I recommend you remove all of the ones that are associated with the same topic, and then we can discuss those just like we did in the elementary package. We do have Mr. Gelano who's on Zoom. I'm told though, just due to a technical issue tonight, that should we need to bring Mr. Gelano in, that it'll have to reboot the system, which will be about a 3-minute or so time frame. So if there's questions that we can't answer, we certainly can do that as well.
Thank you. All right, any questions on the secondary package? Okay, Jeff?
I guess, point of information, just for clarity on this 49.1. So it seemed to me that the consensus from our work session was that we did want to keep the 7-period day. So however this is looking is that, and you said you're going to go back with Greg and figure that out. So a voting this proposal up or down, it would include, if I'm correct, keeping the 7-period day.
That's correct. Should a board member want to retain the 7-period day, what I would recommend is that you remove both items 49 and 49.1 for separate consideration. And if that was, Jeff, to your point, if you'd like to maintain the 7-period day, the recommended motion I would have would be that you would vote to approve line item 49.1 and reject line item 49. That would be the motion I'd recommend if that is what you'd like to do. If someone wanted to do it in reverse, you would just flip those around. So that's the recommended. If you, first thing, you'd remove it from the package, and then the recommended motion would be that we move to approve 49.1 as presented and reject item 49 as presented.
Okay, anyone else? Questions or comments? Amy?
I have a question about if the board votes to keep the 7-period day. We were given a number of different scheduling options, and it was unclear to me whether the administration was looking for some thoughts or perspective on what scheduling approach we preferred, or, general guidelines, or if they wanted us to choose one. And so I'm just wondering what you want from us.
So just to be clear, we know that there are two general options that were shared as ways to be able to retain the 7-period schedule at the middle school while meeting standards, specifically in the fine arts in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We know that the direction that the board was interested in was looking at more of that semester-based art. And so that's the way that we would go down that road. I don't think the board has ever gotten into scheduling. That's typically more of a management issue. What I would say is that we would intend to be able to follow through on the option that was presented that we know that was preferred. You asked Mr. Gelano what was his preferred schedule, and he shared with you option 1 was his preferred schedule. When he goes to make that schedule, if you look at all the other things that were in there, it's not appropriate in my mind to tie his hands based on that sample that he gave to show how it works out, knowing full well that the intention would be to meet it in the way that it was described. But scheduling is not something that is for the faint of heart, right? There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. It's not just the master schedule itself, right? It's making sure all of the students get into the places that they need to be. So that's why we removed the option 1 to specify that, knowing that full well that that is the direction that we intend to go.
That answer it, Amy? Okay.
Yeah, and I
Did
think,
you have a question too?
well, I was just gonna say, if what I hear you saying, Matt, is right. We're creating the budget for that to happen. How
Correct.
it gets executed is ultimately up to Greg and you and the
It's,
administration.
and as the superintendent, I do not micromanage the principal's scheduling, right? We give a set of parameters, we get a set of FTE, we give a set of criteria, and then it is the principal, the assistant principal, the counselors who are involved in that process of registration and all those kinds of things. And then, of course, in working with appropriate other staff on the course offerings and things like that. But I don't typically micromanage the scheduling of the principals.
Right, yeah. Nor should the board, I think.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so seeing there are no more questions or comments, I am gonna pull, item 49, 49-1, 67A, and 67B.
You also want to take 67 as well then?
60 and 67. Yeah, I see that now. Thank you. I didn't catch that. So we're pulling 49, 49.1, 67, 67A, and 67B. So I move that we approve the secondary package. Oh,
I would like to pull something as well.
right. Oh, you want to also pull, is there, right, excuse me for that. Any other items that people want to pull, Amy?
Yes, I would like to pull 56 and 57.
Okay, apologize for that. Okay, anybody else have an item they would like to pull for separate consideration? Okay, so we can, I'll move to approve the secondary reduction package, except for line items 49, 49-1, 67, 67A, and 67B, as well as line item 56 and 57. Can I get a second on that? Second by Ben. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have several items that we've pulled, so we'll have a discussion on those. So 49 and 49-1. Anybody have any comments to make on 49, 49-1?
I would just reaffirm our discussion from last week that it seems like consensus is we are supportive of a 7-period day. And just as Ben said, we're setting the budget oversight today, and we'll let Mr. Jeleno move forward with his staff to figure out the best way to allocate that FTE. And I will be voting in support of 49.1 and rejecting 49.
All right,
And I
anybody
just-
else have questions? Oh, Ben?
No, sorry. Just a clarifying question for Val or Matt. So by voting in support of 49-1 and rejecting 49, we're gonna essentially bring 255 back into expenditure, correct? Just for the record. And then, and I would just voice my support for that largely based on a lot of feedback that we had from the community, but I also, what I said in the work session, seems like a substantive and significant change that impacts a lot of students really for a very small amount of money relative to the overall amount that we're having to look at in terms of budget reduction. I understand it has some FTE impacts, here and there, especially in terms of what Mr. Jeleno and the administration decide to do in terms of staffing and schedule. But for me, it's the structural kind of impact that it has, especially on middle school population who we know is, transitioning from elementary before entering high school, and the availability and chance to have those electives seems like a high return on investment for that money. So that's why I'm in support of keeping that at this point in time.
Anyone else comment or question on these two items? And I wanted to, oh, I'm sorry, you have questions?
Yeah, I will be. I mean, pending the discussion on other items, I will be, as Corey stated, in favor of 49.1 and rejecting 49.
Okay, thank you. And I wanted to add that I'm not opposed to a change in the schedule at the middle school, but I do think it needs more time to discuss and more stakeholders at the table. So I just wanted to add that comment. Anyone else at this time? All right, then I move that we approve line item 49-1 as presented and reject line item 49. Can I have a second? Second by Corey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That reduction passes. Next, we have line items 67, 67A, and 67B. Does anybody have any comments on those items? Okay, Amy?
So I think we have a couple things to think about. First, I'd like to say I would be in favor of increasing it from $100 to $200 in the first year, and then maybe in the second year, increasing it up to $250. Because I think doing more than 100% increase is a huge sticker shock initially. So there should be some phasing if we decide to go that high. I also think we need to hear more about what the parking situation might be like at the high school in the next few years, because with the reimagined high school, are we going to lose spots? Are we charging a lot for a big mess? So I'm just wondering if you have any sense of that, Dr. Hillman, what the future of high school parking looks like in the short term.
Well, in the long term, when the project is complete, we'll have the same amount of parking then as we do now, but the interim is what is going to be challenging. I can't tell you how many fewer parking spots we will have, but it stands to reason that we're going to phase the project so students can continue to attend classes in the Northfield High School as it is now. The project will need to be staged, which means there will need to be materials and equipment and personnel on campus. And when you think about the site that we're talking about, we're obviously not going to be doing that on practice fields or on athletic fields. So it leaves parking lots as part of that. So we will have reduced parking. I do not yet know because we have not gotten to the point of, we are starting to talk about phasing the project. We have been thinking through, are there ways to create other temporary spots throughout the different, over the course of the couple of years of the project? Maybe one year some parking is here, the next year it's someplace else. But we don't have those plans finalized yet. The only thing I can tell you for sure is there will be less parking, and I do feel it will be likely substantially less parking to begin with. Now, the Rockfield parking lot, which is currently the free parking lot, that will not be impacted. So that lot will be as is, and I don't actually know day to day if that's full. It's quite a walk from the Rockfield parking lot to the high school itself. But in order to put up with the rain to get the rainbow, that might be something that students have to use. So we have not charged for the Rockfield parking lot, nor do I intend to charge for the Rockfield parking lot at this time. It will be less, Amy. I don't know how much less, but it will be time limited, right? It'll be for a couple of years, 3 at the most.
Ben, did you have a question?
A comment.
Comment? Okay, and then were you through, Amy? For now. Okay, go ahead, Ben.
I just, I think similar to what I said at the work session, it would make sense to me to just match the high school parking fee with whatever we end up charging for the bus fee, because I view those as almost equivalent. So rather than landing on a number tonight, that would be what I would recommend or allocate for. That's just my comment.
Okay, Maggie?
Yeah, I was going to echo that. I personally will be paying $225 next year to send my daughter on the bus. And it's going up from 0. So initially I was surprised, 100 to 250 does feel like a big jump, but 0 to 225 is also a jump. I have a neighbor who will have 2 kids, so 550. So, I would like to also maybe incentivize bus use a little bit. And so maybe 225 is a way to incentivize that a little bit. It's a little less. But I will be supporting the 250 per pass.
Anyone else? Question or comment? Amy?
So does that mean we have yet another option that we should be considering, which is 225 or not?
Yes, as I laid out in that voting procedures document, this is one of those line items that a board member could modify one of the recommendations. So if a board member wished to modify the recommendation, how I would suggest is that you say something to like this. I move to increase high school student parking fees from $100 to $225, beginning with the 25-26 school year, and to reject line items 67, 67A, and 67B. That makes it very clear. You know, you've created your own level, and then we've rejected the other pieces as well. So if that's what a board member would like to do, they certainly can do that.
Okay, Corey?
And thinking through the numbers, I think 250 is okay. I think 225 is okay. I think it's reasonable to increase the rates based on what we saw for comparable and peer districts. I also think Maggie made a great point last week about making sure it's fair in consideration of the bus pass or the bus fees. Going any less than 225, I think would be an incorrect move here. So with what's in front of us, I'm fine with 250. If someone wants to amend it and do 225, I guess the difference is $10,000. So that's potentially, depending on the ridership or the number of passes available. But I also think the construction period is irrelevant to this conversation, whether we're charging 100 or 250 or $1,000. The spots are the spots are the spots. So after construction, we'll have the same number of spots, and then hopefully it's an easier line in the budget for what revenue will be. But I'm okay at 250. If someone wants to amend it to 225 or even to make it exactly whatever we end up on the ridership, that's okay too.
Jeff, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, just a point of information on, parking at Rock Fields. Is that, I mean, from what you know, parking at Rock Field now, is that, all the Four Seasons, can you make it a fairly straight shot and a safe shot to walk over to the high school or?
Yeah, I do think it's used year round. I think that it is, it's a hike to get there, for sure, from the rock fields to the
Can you
building
make it,
itself.
is it a straight shot or do you have to walk?
I think it
over
depends on the time of year.
Yeah, well,
Because when there's no snow, you can walk straight there, right? You've got less options, obviously, when there is winter weather.
yeah, I drove every year I went to high school and that's, I parked right there. But I look at that and I think, well, of course, back then I didn't pay any fees, but the points are valid. And I think, when you're looking at different things, I think whatever lean, I guess is kind of the direction of where we are today.
Okay, anybody else, question or comment? Amy?
So I enjoyed this discussion actually and hearing what everyone has to say. And I just want to say that I'd like to move that we approve 67B with $250 and just do it.
And Amy, I'm just going to see if there are any other questions before we move to a motion, okay? Anybody else? Ben?
I just call out in the district services 28, the transportation fees says 150 to 300 annually. Valley, I think you came up with 225, kind of based on, so I don't know that that's a hard and fast number right now. Am I correct to think that? So I would make a motion to
You had a motion on the floor.
Oh, okay.
Actually, we got someone who's made a motion, so.
Oh, dang. All right.
So we need to see if there's a second. If there's
That's
no
right.
second, it can die.
Okay, so I'm gonna,
Sorry to
there are no
confuse.
more questions or comments then at this point on this item. Okay, so Amy, you would like to make a motion and we'll vote it up or down. What is your motion?
I move that we approve line 67B, increasing the parking fee to $250.
And can we add that? So if we just say 67B, do we need to mention 67A and 67, or does that cover it?
If you do just 67B, it does cover it. If you add 67 and 67A, it just makes it very clear for people reading the minutes.
Well, and that we,
Go ahead, Amy.
then also that we do not approve 67 and 67A.
Okay, so the motion is that we approve 67B and reject 67A and 67. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Corey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. I did want to say, we had a suggestion that if the, voting was not unanimous, that we would go to a roll call vote. It's obvious that there are more, in agreement than opposed. Should we go ahead and do a roll
There's-
call vote? at
there's
this
no
point?
requirement.
There's
I
no
think we're fine. Yep.
requirement.
I think you're fine with what you've done.
Okay, so, the A's have it, 67B passes. Okay, the other items that were pulled from this package are line items 56 and 57. Okay, we can have a discussion on that. Amy, go ahead.
So the reason why I asked for lines 56 and 57 to be pulled is I thought it would be nice to have a discussion among the board about, my concern is that we're losing two high-level support positions, the vice principal and one of the counselors at the same time. And I would like to suggest that instead of having them both go at the same time and sort of all of the confusion that might happen with that and a significant drop in support, that we phase it a bit and hold on to the assistant vice principal position for one more year, and see how it goes, having just lost the counselor, and then move from there, possibly to move to the dean of students. But I think we're asking a lot of our high school administration to lose two very important support positions at the same time, at a time in our culture where we're always being told how much support the students need, how much mental health issues people are having. And I know when we lose the counselor position, it only ratchets us back to pre-COVID. But when we lose a second assistant principal, we've had two assistant principals for over 30 years now, and no one who's currently at the high school has a memory of what it's like to do with just the work, which is one assistant principal. So I think looking at this as phasing might be a better approach, and not asking the high school to make such a drastic change all at once.
Thank you, Amy. Anyone else want to comment on 56 and 57? Ben?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that comment, Amy, giving that a lot of thought as well. I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think the thing that I struggle with is that when I kind of put all those pieces together, we're talking not just about kind of one FTE. I could really probably go and make that argument for any FTE in this package. And where I was able to support kind of the middle school piece, largely because of the structural change to the 7 versus 6 period day, I think I have to look at, for me, I have to look at the budget in its totality and say, rather than this position or that, have the board play that role, or as a board member play that role. I don't feel like I can come to that in good conscience. I have to think about the package as a whole. And, I think it will be hard. And, I think that's what we look at next year as we work through kind of an earlier budget process. And if that really rises to the fore as something that is a pain point at the high school, then we'll have learned that. Maybe a tough lesson. Certainly don't want to see us lose anybody in any of these roles. So that's the lens I'm bringing to my decision-making process.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Amy? And then Corey.
Well, and the reason why I pulled out the 50, yeah, it was 57 for the dean of students, is that would be a savings, at least, the first year. So the initial hit wouldn't be as high. But again, I'm looking at sort of a phasing process, where we would provide a little additional support over the next year and see how things go. But I would imagine at this point that we would probably drop down to the dean of students after that.
Good. Corey?
Just want to say I appreciate you bringing this forward, Amy. I've had some reservations about this transition as well, and I've reflected a lot in last week in particular. And I had thought about pulling this as well. And my question to Dr. Hillman earlier about about the district services package, if things do not go as well as we hope, where can we reassess and come back? And I was also including this kind of in part of that conversation because we've heard a lot about just the overall need in our buildings nowadays. And I recognize that for 30 years, we've had these two roles. And I would guess anyone in the audience here today or anyone watching at home knows that schools have not gotten easier to manage in 30 years with the education requirements, with the mental health requirements, social emotional learning, belonging, the whole collection of needs. Financially, though, if we need to move forward with a budget that works in the long term. And this is a step we can take this year and see how it goes. And if our administration who put forward this, Mr. Byer, believes in it, let's give it a year. And if it does not land where we think it should, we can reassess. So I'm in support of, begrudgingly of this reduction.
Thank you. Anyone else? Maggie?
I agree. This is one I've thought a lot about since our work session. And again, it comes down to that structural change versus kind of positional change. And I think in this situation, I will kind of rely on the process leading us to this point, that if they think it can be done with a dean of students, let's go that route. And it's probably not going to be easy or great, but this is another one where it's, with reservation that I will approve this reduction.
Thank you, Maggie. Anyone else, question or comment at this point? And I also wanted to say that the thought of the high school losing a counselor and an assistant principal seems like a lot. And I'm sure all of these items are a lot for the staff that are picking up the additional duties. As I said, we're going to have reduction in staff, but not a reduction in their duties. So I absolutely agree with you that this is going to feel heavy and it's going to hit them hard. I like the idea of delaying it a year, and so we can, see how the board votes on that. But I do agree that similar to the other staff reductions, we don't want to do any of them. We know it's going to be really challenging.
Claudia, if I can make a comment.
Yep.
Just to the point of, getting it done, I think we could make the same case for any reduction of the positions in all 5 packages. I was at the meeting with the high school staff when Mr. Byer was describing, how a dean of students may work, or, alternate to an assistant principal. And thing is very clear is that it is not the same. And things that people can expect are, we'll still do all the work that we can, but delayed response time. And again, we can say that for all of the pieces there, but I want to be clear. I don't think that this was saying that it can get done, at the same rate with a dean of students, but that this is a piece that would help reduce the budget, and we would still endeavor to do as much as we are able to. But things like response times, there's just less coverage at evening activities, those kinds of things. And again, we can say that for all of the position reductions in the package, there's some kind of loss, right? There's some kind of, whether it be more students in a class, right? Whether it be more students for an administrator to be supervising or managing on a day-to-day basis. So I don't want people to think that it's going to be exactly the same, because it won't be. We've tried to been very clear throughout all of this. But given the parameters and the budget that we have, these are the pieces together when we look at the entirety of it. Because part of the reason this is so that there could be more teaching FTE at the high school. So that was that modulating different pieces together to put together the best package to hit the budget target and do as much as we can with the people who we have. So I just don't want people to go in thinking, oh, a 0.16 will take care of it. They'll do everything they can within the time that they have, and the other people will step up and do the best that they can pick up, as many duties as possible. But it won't be the same. Just like all of these reductions, it will not be the same moving ahead.
Maggie?
I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about, can we do a phased recommendation, or is this something where we would simply kind of remove the line and then?
We would be amending the
Yes.
language, so I would imagine we can do a phased in.
That's at the board's pleasure. I think it's my job and Val's job to explain to you what the consequences are. What the consequences are is that we reduce less this year, and you've seen the financial scenarios. The less that we reduce this year, that means the next round of reductions comes sooner, because we'll drop below the fund balance target more quickly. So we didn't put some, a recommendation for it of, oh, if we recommend $6 million and the board approves 5.5, we've got some, wiggle room there. That's not how we roll. We tell you the number, and then we try to do the best that we can to distribute it in the best way possible. So you can choose to do anything that you desire as the elected officials of the community. The consequence will be, it just means that we'll have less reductions, which means that the expenditures will be more than what we projected, and it would be possible that we may have to make some more difficult decisions sooner rather than later. Now, there's lots of decision points Maybe we get a miracle at the legislature. I'm not holding my breath, but there's a number of things that could happen. But it's just our responsibility to make sure that we tell you what the consequences of those decisions are. Do you want to add anything to that, Val?
Yes, Corey.
I just want to say, I also don't think it's responsible to go through this process and then say, oh, we're going to hold this position for one more year, but then we're going to phase it out. I think that's disrespectful to the person in that role. And I don't know that it does much for us in the long term if we today would decide we're just going to remove that position next year anyway. I think it's better just to move ahead with the plan in place. It makes me uncomfortable thinking about doing a phase approach with this type of position. I know we've done in the past with some other positions, but that was more about curriculum than a specific role. And I think it just sets us up for a weird situation if we went that route.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with phasing it because we're talking about a support role that is not just the only one that they're losing. The administration's losing 2 support roles there. So I hear what you're saying, and I also feel like it's appropriate to delay it 1 year. And it has consequences if we delay it. Corey?
But my understanding is Amy was saying delay it 1 year and then cut it next year, not delay the decision to see if we want to keep it beyond next year, unless I misunderstood what you were proposing.
I'm actually open to either one. I mean, we could review it in a year, but my initial proposal was that we delay the implementation of 56 and 57 until fiscal year 27.
Right, so reduce it with a year delay. Anybody else question or comment on these items? Anything else, Corey?
I would echo what I just said
Okay.
with my initial interpretation. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we can vote up or down, and that is on, make sure I get this right. Okay, so I move that we approve reduction item 56 and 57 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ben. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
The reduction passes. Thank you, Amy, for bringing that up. Okay, those are the only items that were pulled from the secondary package. So we're moving on to the special services package, our last package. Dr. Hillman, do you have any comments, or Val, any?
There were no changes in this package from the last time that the board saw it.
All right. Are there any questions from the board members? Any comments or questions on this special services reduction package? Okay, are there any items that anybody wishes to pull from the special services package? Ben?
Yeah, I think we have to pull 76 and 76A.
Yes, thank you.
I would move to do that.
Yep. Anybody else? Any other items? All right. Okay, I move that we approve the special services reduction package without items 76 and 76A. Is there a second? And by Jenny, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the reduction package passes without 76 and 76A. We can now have a discussion on those items. Is there anybody who wants to make any comments on 76 or 76A? Jenny?
Thanks, Claudia. I just wanted to make a general kind of observation throughout the process, because I know we started without the alternative there first, and we saw the repercussions from the community and the concerns. But I think throughout trying to learn more about both reductions, the hardest part for me was that the state did not give us the duties, I guess, if you will, of these staff positions. And, you know, they don't have to, but for me, that was just kind of difficult in trying to figure out, you know, is this going to, you know, leave some of our students without being able to without having someone to take care of those specific duties. And I always look to kind of state and law, as you probably know, to help. And of course, that gave me no help at all. So that was a struggle for me. And I just kind of wanted to make that general comment.
Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else on either of those items? Okay, Corey?
Just want to share my appreciation to this administration for listening to our early feedback and coming back with an alternative that not only in my eyes is a better choice, but also is a bigger cost savings as well. So thank you. And I am supportive of 76A.
Okay,
And
Ben?
just to clarify, 76A would give us one licensed nurse assigned to each building, correct?
That is correct. So we would go back to the pre-2023 staffing levels. And so we would have one RN or LPN in each building. I do want to point out that this is another example of us doing the same or more, right, with less staff. The one required licensed school nurse, which this person would also be serving a building, does have a variety of additional responsibilities, as you've heard. And so I do want to acknowledge that it's like many of the other administrative or administrative type positions. We are consolidating administrative duties with other duties, if you will. So this is what we had done prior to 2023. So going back to that, but I also want to acknowledge and recognize that the person who's in that official licensed school nurse position has some additional responsibilities. They're also paid differently than the regular building nurses, but they will be both supervising a building and executing those additional requirements from the state.
Thank you. Anyone else, question or comment? Okay, seeing none, then we will move to a vote on item 76 and 76A. I move that we approve 76A and reject line item 76. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are done with our reduction packages. Thank you so much for organizing us, Dr. Hellman, and for all of the work that the district did to present us these reductions. Are there any comments board members want to make at this point? Just want to open the floor to if you'd like to say something. Ben?
Yeah, I would just, thank the administration, fellow board members, but also the community for, just giving us so much thoughtful input and feedback. And this is a very difficult process to go through, but I think, really demonstrates how to do it. There's a lot of units of government that could learn from this approach and what we've done, and certainly end up making some very difficult choices this evening, and choices that'll have long-term, both short-term and long-term ramifications. But I feel thankful that I'm able to represent a community that can show up and have thoughtful and meaningful input and come to a consensus at the end of the day. So thank you to fellow board members and administration and the community.
Thank you. Anyone else want to have a final comment before we move on? Dr. Hellman?
So I want to just reiterate what Ben said. If you really look at the numbers, hundreds of people involved in this. And I want to, first of all, thank the board for trusting this process, right? It is a process where we do this work with the community and not to the community, like so many organizations execute this process. So over 80 people in the budget teams, 177 people at that public meeting, 87 emails to the board from constituents. And the thing that I really want to emphasize is almost all of that engagement was constructive. It was not pitchforks, right? People expressed their understanding of the need for action. How many times did we read people say, I know this is what we have to do. I don't have to like it, but I know it's what we have to do. And people advocated fiercely for their perspective, and they also did so respectfully. So I reject this notion that we can't have these hard discussions in our current democracy in a way that is civil, respectful, and seeks the greater good. This board did not approve all of the 86 line items, right? That's a good thing. That shows that the vast majority of what those committees brought forward were palatable, right? They were palatable to the large amount of the community based on the feedback we got. They were palatable to board members who voted in favor of them. And yet in those areas where you surgically said, not ready to do this yet, that's exactly how the process is supposed to work. So we can, I've said it many times, two things can be true. We can disdain the actions that we just had to take that very difficult step to make sure that our budget is in order for future teachers and classes and parents. And we can also be proud of the work that we've done. Mostly, I'm proud of the number of people who are involved and with the decorum that people maintain in doing it. I think we should all be very proud of that. So thank you to the community. Thank you to our staff and people who stepped forward to share their perspectives in a way that understood we all have to do this work. What's the best way to do it? And we also will not waste what we've learned. There are things here tonight that people discussed and some things that people didn't discuss that we will bring back again next year for discussion, not necessarily for reduction, but to say, is that particular program, is that particular schedule, is that particular approach the right thing? We never waste a good crisis. There's that old political saying, right? And so we'll make sure that the things that we didn't act on tonight, or even some of the things that we did that merit additional discussion, we'll make sure that those things are done so in an honorable way as well. So thank you to the board for your exemplary leadership. Thank you to our staff for being involved. Thank you to our community, for our district youth council students who have been instrumental in this process. And you add the kids who showed up to the district youth council hearings, now we're well into the hundreds. So I'm disappointed in the actions that we had to take, but pleased that we did so with such respect.
And recognizing that there's going to be weeks, months, lots of time of feeling that sadness and that grief.
Absolutely. And that's appropriate.
And we will, even though we're not in the building, in the classroom, we feel it too. Okay, our next item 9 is items for information, and we have a construction update, number 9.
So the construction update this month is that we have really brought the first phase of the planning to a close. So our core planning team met for its 8th and final time on April 16th. They continue to provide feedback on conceptual floor plans. The same for the activities subcommittee. The activities subcommittee met for its 4th and final time on April 16th. Now WOLD will shift to that point where they're doing more finite details. The next step will be user groups, where they start to work with representatives from each department, literally looking at what is the front of the room for teaching, where should the light switches go, that level of detail, where should the windows go, things like that. And so those will begin. In fact, I think the first round of those begin next week, maybe even this week or next week. And then I do want to point out that the next board meeting, Sal Bagley and the team from WOLD will be here to share with you publicly for the first time some of the sketches and drawings that the core planning team had worked together to come up with. So still, again, at the beginning of this, but people will start to get to see what the building is going to feel like in terms of where things are located in those floor plan kinds of documents. So very exciting coming up on May 12th. That's the construction update for tonight.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Hellman at this time? Questions or comments? No? Right, then we're on to item B, which is our graduation update. The ALC graduation is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Friday, May 30th in the middle school auditorium. Our Northfield High School graduation is scheduled for 2 p.m. on Sunday, June 1st at Memorial Field. Our future meetings are Monday, May 12th, 6 p.m. It's a regular board meeting in this boardroom. Tuesday, May 27th, 6 p.m., a regular board meeting. Monday is Memorial Day, and so we've moved it to Tuesday. And Monday, June 9th, 6 p.m., another regular board meeting in this boardroom. That is all the business that we have tonight. Again, we thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Second? Is there a second? By Maggie. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.